Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. How
Yeah.
are you?
Good. How are you, man? Long time no see.
What's last time? June's
June's
wedding,
wedding.
September.
Oh, that was September? Wow, yeah. Yeah, he's been married for a while now. But how has life been for you 2023? How has it been, man?
Uh, 2023 has, mm, um, I want to say roller coaster, but the first half of the year was tough, and the second half of the year was much better. Uh, Primary reason for first year being tough was probably because we had too much expectation for the year, right? I mean, 2022 was bad, and at the beginning people say, okay, the worst is over, and the stock market has gone like totally upside down. So maybe 2023 was a year of recovery.
Yeah.
But there you have successive interest rate raises and have all these issues. So I think us and some people around us were sort of taken a bit by surprise. Um, and that changed a lot of the planning that you did at the beginning of the year. Um, it took us like a couple months to realize that okay, this is not going to be a normal year, and
Yeah.
you make adjustment to people, you make adjustment to plans, you make adjustment to where your team dedicates their time, and we also let go some people.
Hmm.
So I think from August onwards we're in a much better shape, and
Okay.
actually we ended the year pretty well. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. I mean,
How
so
about you?
what well, for myself was more of a year of trying to get more focus and clarity still.
Mm,
A lot of more personal wins actually. I spent a lot of
mm,
quality time with family.
mm,
Probably traveled too much, but I mean, on a personal level, that's not a bad thing, I guess. Especially because
mm.
we were traveling before Otis came out into the world, right? So, um, for at least for me, I did more than Sabrina because towards her last trimester before the baby came
Mm.
out,
And you
she
were still traveling.
yeah. So she did some traveling, but then she couldn't go like diving with us.
I see.
She missed one big trip where we went caving in Vietnam.
Oh, nice.
So we went to
Mm,
the similar, like the cave system where Sun Dung, the biggest cave system, is. We didn't go to the big one, but it was still quite an intensive trip where they did like multiple
mm.
caves. But then, of course,
I
yeah,
I actually liked going to Vietnam for holidays. It's just I don't know. It just has this charm. So last year I did two personal trips to Vietnam. I mean, the first one was to I think I told you about it. This this hotel 1 hour north up in the mountains north of Haiphong,
yeah,
and where one of the emperors went to become a monk, and that was that was one of the most serene but yet pleasant experiences I had. I mean, it was quiet, I had enough time to reflect, etc. And towards the end of the year, I went to Osaka. I mean, I had been to Osaka like many years ago, but
yeah.
this time is a different experience.
Were you able to see anything, or was it too foggy and cloudy?
It was good weather for 2 of the 8 days I was there. I have to spend 8 days.
Oh wow, dude, that's well. You must have done a lot of meditation because there's not much to do up.
Yeah, it's like a sitting at the balcony of the hotel room and looking at the fog and then reflecting about, okay, what have I done wrong and what have I done right,
Yeah,
and how do I be more responsible for the team? So yeah, but I did one thing which was something that I'm very proud of and something totally nonsensical. So so one day I realized that the Sapa is like 45 minutes from the Chinese border,
yeah.
and so I just went over
You just walk
and
over.
crossed the border.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just
I always wanted to do that, but I didn't have back then when I went to SUP, I didn't have the Chinese visa. Now I have like a visa, so but yeah.
10 years visa. Right?
Yeah, well,
So
mine's running out in 2025, so I have very little time left to use it. But yeah.
yeah, so when I was crossing the border into China, the border, I mean, the immigration was asking me, "Hey, why are you here for?" Because it doesn't sound like a normal business destination. I said, "I'm here for a couple of noodles," and well, she she believed me and actually went in and with my wife and had a couple of noodles and went out.
Oh, was Yorlin was able to cross without a visa, or
She has a Singapore passport,
oh,
so
Singapore
so we
passport
don't
has free
need a visa.
travel. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good.
and and that's being extended, right? So Malaysian visa now has visa-free travel to China. This mutual agreement.
Thailand too.
I think Thailand is the final stages of negotiation, so which
I
will happen very soon.
I saw the headline. They approved free travel for both sides already.
Yeah, so the Prime Minister of Thailand made an announcement, and we
Oh,
didn't see
okay.
the announcement from the Chinese side, so he was too excited.
He's trying to push it. He's playing games. You want to push that
Yeah,
tourism.
yeah.
But what? But I saw what people were saying in the Momentum group that the Chinese sentiment was what the still very abated. People still don't want to travel as much, right? Tourism dollars is still down. They're scared of all the kidnapping or whatever they're seeing in the media. Is that true? Or
Th- This year, I traveled back to China many times. I counted. I was last year, sorry, 2023. I was in Shenzhen 6 times, and I traveled across different cities as well. Um, My impression is, I mean, there are multiple factors, right? And first, the economic recovery that people had hoped for has not yet arrived, and people are still expecting the government to come up with the strongest stimulus, so that sort of reflect a little bit about the negative sentiment that people have about their money, and also personally, I think this is something which doesn't get reported internationally as much. This telephone scam thing is huge. It's huge in
oh yeah,
China, and I know lots of people. I mean, I know actually a number of like retirees whose entire savings have been wiped out by this. So, but nobody seems to know the extent of this. But how I felt was that I mean, like medium-sized or small-sized towns in China, you go to a restaurant and you're surrounded by police messages saying that, hey, don't fall victim
oh wow,
of phone scams.
okay,
So
yeah,
so so they have to go to that extent to remind everyone. So
yeah.
it probably shows the extent of this issue. And of course, I mean, many things compound together that people are less willing to spend
Yeah.
nowadays. Mm,
That's
mm,
interesting because maybe my experience is different because we last year I went to Yunnan and Kunming, right? So
mm,
then, but maybe
mm,
that's because it's a tourist town. It felt like at least
mm,
locally, domestically, people were traveling quite a lot. Like you still saw big tour groups locally, and people were spending
mm.
money. But maybe because that's like a tourist destination, and it will have some demand always, and
Uh,
it felt quite nice. I mean, there are some parts of like the city in Kunming where you could see they were pushing development, but it was very empty, almost
mm,
like a ghost town.
mm.
But
My
in general, it felt like it was still humming along nicely. Still, progress was being made. At least that was like my sentiment. I don't know.
my aunt bought apartment in Kunming, and the last summer, 2023, was the first full summer she spent there, and because Kunming is known for its climate, right?
Yeah,
It's cool in summer and it's warm in winter, so she spent a full 2 months there, and she was happy. I've been to a few tourist cities in China last year, and they are always very packed.
yeah,
So
yeah,
so one, I mean, I have not studied detailed about statistics, but one interpretation is that much of this demand could have been like, people going to Thailand, people going to Japan,
yeah. But they
but
do it
now
locally.
because yeah, they do it locally. Yeah.
Yeah. But the other thing
Mm,
people have told me is like so a lot of my friends went back to Shanghai. They used to
mm,
live and work at the heyday of Shanghai, like in the aughts in the 2010s, right? And
mm,
um, it's not really this 24/7 vibrant city. Like a lot of things are shutting down by 6 p.m. sharp. It's very quiet now. Streets are not as packed. So it seems like
I,
post COVID things like consumer behavior has also changed. There's more of this like app usage and I'm not sure what it is,
mm,
but like that's such a weird thing here. Like you imagine Shanghai to be always busy, bustling. And when I went even with you guys, it still
mm,
had that kind of sense of vibe, right? But I don't know.
mm.
What do you think?
Uh, I think first thing that you feel strongly in places like Shanghai or even Beijing is that the absence of foreigners. I
Yes.
mean,
Yes.
in 2019, you go to Shanghai, you go to a bar, you go to a club, you have like tons of foreigners who are there for different reasons. I mean, working, studying, and stuff. But now you hardly see foreigners in Shanghai, and of course, the, the 3 years of the pandemic control took a toll, right? I mean,
Yeah.
many people like couldn't stand it, right? I mean, they just went back. Um, and I think that's also the reason why the government is now like making the visa rules much
Mm,
easier for many nationalities.
makes sense.
Whether that will work, I don't know. I mean, the problem with confidence is that it takes like years to build, and it takes like one serious incident to actually completely
Yeah.
destroy it. Just like the reputation, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well,
Mm,
2023, like you said, there was high expectations coming off 2022. It was
mm.
slower. Are you when you say that, were you referring to our region in general, Asia, or the globally?
I was referring to what I was exposed to, which is mostly this region, Southeast Asia,
Yeah.
as
Okay.
well as China, where I have been 8 times last
Yeah.
year. But I do talk to people from other regions. There's bits and pieces of information, but it's not enough for me to make a judgment that
Yeah.
whether the same applies. I mean, in other regions.
I
Mm,
it's because at least in US, my understanding was, especially when we were
mm,
there last year, was that
mm,
it was a bit slow coming off. Like we had this
mm,
expectation where, like, well, we
mm,
knew the sentiment end of 2022. There was this very bearish sentiment. People thought it was going to get worse, but it didn't get worse, right? Of course,
mm,
Feds kept hiking rates, but economy was still very good. Jobs were very, joblessness was very low.
yep.
Inflation by mid-year was already taming, right? And they had kept increasing up to that point, but then now, right by the end of 2023 and into 2024, there's this big expectation of rate cuts, right?
Mm,
And then when I was digging into 2024 market outlooks, at least in the US, a
mm,
lot of people are quite depends on which pundit you talk to or which research institution you talk to, but a lot of them are bullish on various stocks. So they think there's going to be a big rebound, and depending, something it's tech, something it's financials, right? So in general, it seems to be more of a bullish outlook. So I don't know if you should be contrarian, and I don't know how you're positioning your business or what you think, what that
I
affects
think,
globally, because the dollar goes down. How does that affect other
mm,
countries? Or dollar,
mm.
remains high if they don't, cut if inflation comes back, right? So I don't know if you have any thoughts around that.
I, I think oftentimes we don't think enough about we think about what's happening. We think about what might happen, and we don't think enough about what's the second degree or third degree consequences of what
Correct.
might happen, right? So just give you a more sort of regional example. So the ban of TikTok in Indonesia,
Yeah.
and people thought, okay, TikTok is going to lose this volume, etc., etc., and that's going to impact their ambitions. Other countries are going to follow, and I think people didn't expect that actually gets the ByteDance leadership to take this more seriously.
Mm,
And one of the co-founders personally intervened and to struck deal to essentially acquire Tokopedia.
mm,
Then then now they become. I mean, if the execution is done well, they become the number one e-commerce platform in Indonesia, making Shopee number two.
yeah.
And how that would trigger the response from Shopee. So
Yeah.
so there are always these issues where it happens and it leads to certain consequence, but this consequence pushes, I mean, some other counterparties to react differently and result in something which is different from what you would predict if you think linearly, right?
Yeah. That's true.
Mm,
So
mm.
what do you think that means for your outlook for 2024 then? Especially in the context of
I
2023 and how you set your expectations last year into this year.
I think I th- my expectation for 2023. I mean, you probably know that lots of economists had predicted a recession in US,
Yeah, correct.
and my my sentiment at the beginning of last year was if the US goes into very quick recession, into a recession, and people know that, okay, inflation is a problem which has definitely been solved, and of course, the investor sort of um sentiments always run a little bit ahead of the reality, right? I
Yeah.
mean, they have anticipation. So if they know that, okay, the US is definitely in a recession, they know that in 2 or 3 quarters we'll be out of a recession. So you can start planning things.
So soft landing.
And
Yeah.
and what how yeah what happened is that it was just hanging there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
job numbers were robust, and GDP numbers were robust, and as a result, I mean, the inflation was okay, been tamed, not tamed. So,
Yeah.
so nobody was sure what was happening.
Yeah.
So I think coming to 2024, I was discussing with Keith, the guy who used to work for Wall Street Journal and one of the best observers about China, and and he was saying that the best way to start about 2024 is having very low expectations.
Yeah.
Then you will be either content or very happy because things will exceed
Yeah.
your expectations.
And of course, that
Mm.
depends how you set your goals too, I guess. If you have that in mind and you set your goals, I mean, you want to set goals, especially where you're kind of excited and a little bit uncomfortable, but you don't want to overshoot
Mm.
it too, maybe like how you did in 2023, where, which is a constant theme of my problems, personally, where you just set too high, then you just don't,
Yeah.
you just fall so short, and it's also very demotivating. So with that in mind, then what do you think about the second order effects based off what you just said? Right? It's to me, it sounds like you're saying uncertainty and pare back expectations, plan more
Mm.
conservatively, and then
Mm.
say if we are in this situation in the U.S. where it's say sentiment continues to be uncertain or slightly bullish to
Mm.
uncertain, what is the
Mm.
effect for our region where we are now in the Asia region?
I think for me, a number of issues, right? I mean, first is I look at what could be the causes of events or sort of surprises. I mean, I think the war in Europe has has ha- has gone to a stage that everyone's a bit tired. So 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 I don't see that intensifying.
Well,
But of course,
yeah,
there's always like small risk. Yeah.
yeah.
The thing in the Middle East, nobody's sure what's going on. The
It's
election
getting
in Taiwan
worse.
in 1 week stuff. It is getting
Yeah,
worse,
yeah,
and maybe because maybe when it gets too bad, and then the regime in Iran or the Hezbollah will start calculating their chances of survival,
yeah,
and they will cut back. I mean, just like what the North Koreans, right? I mean, they
yeah,
always provoke, but that every action they do, they always have the regime's survival as the highest priority.
yeah,
So so almost never overshoot, right?
yeah. Correct.
Yeah. Mm. Uh, I think for this region, I think piece of danger I see. I mean, actually, it's not in Taiwan. Actually, it's what's happening in South China Sea between China and the Philippines.
Yeah,
It seems that the rhetoric has been tense, and you have constant that I mean, not on the ground but on the sea, kind of like shooting cannons and stuff. I mean, sorry, water cannons and stuff. So I think that's a potentially dangerous flashpoint for the first half of 2024. I'm not sure if the leaders of both sides can calm things down.
it's actually a few months ago. I think it was
Mm.
the Wall Street Journal who covered this. It's like
Mm.
that something along the headlines were saying the most important, like it was like the powder keg that no one's looking at was basically what you're talking about. The whole South
Mm.
China Sea territorial disputes, it spans the whole entire region, actually, right? Everyone
Mm.
actually has a
Mm.
dispute claim with China, from Japan
Mm.
all the way down to Vietnam and
Mm.
Philippines. And so I know
Mm.
I remember the article. I wanted to write something about this article, but it essentially, yeah, I completely agree that this is something that we're completely ignoring. And I mean, you
Mm.
basically hit everything I wanted to talk to you about looking forward for 2024. War in Ukraine, right? Policy is
Mm.
stuck there. Uh,
Mm.
Ukraine's losing ground. You have Israel and Gaza. That's also spinning out of control. Like with the Houthis attacking the U.S. troops. U.S. troops are actually
Mm.
shooting back. It's just like one
Mm.
small thing can blow it up. We have the U.S. election,
Mm.
which is also another wild thing, which like no one's happy about. So, and then like you said, the South China Sea. Like my gut tells me that we're just waiting for more conflict on a bigger global scale.
Mm.
That's what my gut tells me. That's what I'm very worried about, actually. Right.
Mm.
So I think about hedging my bets a lot. Like where should I spend more time building and investing? And it's a very interesting question because
Are,
business
you-
wise, I don't know where this takes us.
are you going to dig a bunker and buy some like nuclear suits?
Well, if I make money, maybe I'll do that. And I'll buy a big plot of land somewhere and do that. But right now, I'm not that well off to do that.
I personally heard, right, some tech leaders from this region have been buying land in New Zealand, same as some of the US entrepreneurs have been
Yeah.
doing. So
Oh,
buying farm, buying
it's like
land, and
Mark Zuckerberg in
yeah,
Hawaii.
yeah. I mean, I'm not sure how safe Hawaii is, but New Zealand definitely is far from
Oh, from
everything.
like
So
nuclear bombs and stuff. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
the me and Dave always do this fantasy exercise where we look at large swaths of land, and the places where you can buy the most land for cheapest is the US and Australia. That's where you still can buy huge amounts of land for cheap. I don't know if you build a bunker in the middle of the Midwest deep down, it should be okay too, maybe.
maybe someone should build a game of real simulation games that charge people arm and leg for to simulate all these doom events and
They
where
do.
they would be safe.
Civilization. They have that.
That's too complicated. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's very complicated.
you need. I mean, I know look, lots of like successful entrepreneurs play that, and I mean, the fundamental is a big fan of that.
Yeah.
But you really need someone to look at and say that, okay, where should I be safe? I mean, if I have made it, if I have the money.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Well, I
Mm.
mean, I think it's a real question. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. Do you have any very specific, unique takes on where, like, given what we talked about business wise,
Mm.
what is the state of
Mm.
things then? Like, what does that mean?
I was reading government predictions in Singapore earlier this week, and they said that okay, Singapore narrowly escaped recession last year.
Yeah.
The growth was like 1.2%,
Yeah.
and this year they expect it to be 1 to 3% growth, GDP growth, and subject to um, external uncertainties.
Well,
So
what's the
so
drag for Singapore though? Like, what's the economy
mm,
that's slowing their growth? I mean, they're primarily financials. They have some biotechnology, trade. Trade is another big one, right? I don't know what.
trade is Uh, I think trade is big, right? You have like lots of large trading houses actually based and headquartered in Singapore,
Yeah.
and you do have a large oil refining and oil processing industry.
Yeah.
You do have the finance, right? Because
Yeah.
and all the sectors are impacted by the uncertainties. I do hear that one of the major oil and gas companies
Yeah.
which have huge operations in Singapore are trying to divest the whole operations, like
Yeah.
4 or 5 thousand people,
Hmm.
and because they said it's just, I mean, with all the benefits, just too expensive to base.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So so one thing I think Singapore has been worried about, I mean, for a long time is the productivity, right? I mean,
Yeah.
for certain things, for safety, for predictability, I mean, people like to base their business in Singapore, but
Hmm.
cost and productivity, that could be a big issue.
Yeah.
Mm, mm.
Well, not everyone is bearish in a region. Like you saw Jensen Huang doing his tour in Southeast Asia, right? A lot of my friends were sending pictures of everyone shaking his hand. It's everyone we know.
Yeah,
So,
I got a bunch of these like friends like shaking hands with Jason, and of course with lots of people in the background. So
yeah,
I don't know how many hands he shook.
a lot,
Um,
too many.
but I think I've seen the stats. Like Singapore was like number 3 or number 4 in terms of Nvidia chips being sold. So I'm not sure how much of that were various Chinese company evading the
Yeah.
restrictions.
Yeah. For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Malaysia has a
Mhm.
very big semiconductor base too historically, so I
Yeah.
know he's really focused on that. And of course, I'm
Mhm.
sure Vietnam is interested in improving their. If they want to get out of the middle income too, they got to invest in their tech sector too, away from manufacturing, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Southeast Asia has still good legs for growth. At least from an
I
economic
I, I, be-
standpoint.
I believe so. I believe so.
Yeah,
So the
yeah,
question is that I mean, for individual business owners, I mean, how do you predict? How do you plan? How
yeah,
do you become resilient
yeah,
with the different external shocks? Because we all know that okay, Southeast Asia fundamentals are good, right? I mean,
yeah.
population, everything. So even if you go like a steady state, like 4 or 5% growth,
Correct.
it's still much better than many places in this world.
Yep,
Mm,
correct. Well,
mm.
It depends if your government has the competency to actually reinvest that back properly, right? Lots of times you see that growth,
Uh,
but when I look in the infrastructure around cities in Southeast Asia, I sometimes wonder, where has the money gone?
mm.
Even though you see the numbers printed. So I don't know.
Oh, speaking of that, a colleague of mine has been taking this Jakarta Bandung high speed railway back and forth.
Oh yeah,
So
how is it?
she's because she had been to China. She had taken the high speed railway in China. So
Yeah,
it's essentially the same. I said, what
very
do you
nice.
expect? It's Chinese built, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
It's smooth, and she sees lots of talented technicians on
yeah,
site.
yeah,
That's probably to make sure that everything goes smoothly. And I think the tickets are heavily subsidized or heavily discounted
yeah.
for a period of time. Not sure how long that would last, or whether they need to start thinking about economics, right, and
Yeah.
to charge the tickets at a certain price. But one observation she made, which was interesting, she said they built the railway stations outside the city center, which is not exactly convenient, right?
Yeah.
I mean, from Jakarta to I think somewhere in the east, the railway station from Bandung is not exactly in the city center. Um, I think, but that's what they had been doing in China. So building large railway or transportation hubs outside the city center,
Mhm.
and then you would have expandability, right? I mean, imagine you build something in a city center where you try to expand, you have to
Mm.
convince I don't know, 50,000 households to move.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But do you think that's actual proper urban planning, or do you think that's the foresight, or it's just more economically
I don't know.
feasible?
I think that depends on Indonesia, not China, right?
That's true.
Because
Yeah.
China can't do the urban planning for Indonesia. So let's see.
Well, if it was China, they would just build over everything straight immediately. So whether it's a mountain or whether it's a city. One of my friends just came back from Guizhou, and then they were saying
Okay.
in the mountains they just build highways straight across the mountains. In America, you have to wind around and all these things, but China just went right across it. So it's very different how they
Yeah,
build things.
Guizhou was historically the province was historically the place where the saying of the mountains are high, the aim is far away
Yeah,
is actually quite applicable because I mean you can't rule these areas. It's just from one place to
yeah,
another place it takes days.
yeah.
Mm.
Okay, so do you want to talk about the last topic then? You were very interested in Lazada and what was happening there. I didn't follow the story too much. I just heard what some people were telling me, where there were large
Mm.
layoffs. One of the rumors was, preparing for IPO. Some articles I read this morning were,
Mm.
just
Mm.
talking about succession planning and the changes, but I really have no clue what's going on. So I don't know. You tell me
But
what are you curious about?
okay, I think I'll give a little bit of background. So obviously, this is the first week of the year. On the second working day of the week, news came out that um, so meeting rooms in Lazada across different countries have been booked out by HR,
Hmm.
and when people received notifications to talk to HR on one-on-one basis, and I think by Wednesday it was pretty apparent that a massive scale layoff was going
Mm,
on. And it's across the board. I mean, first I think it was reported by a media outlet in Singapore. They said, okay, people in Singapore are affected. And very soon you realize that I mean, all the countries were affected. Even the R&D center in Shenzhen was badly affected as well. So I think that there was some reports saying that 30% of the people have been laid off. If that's true, that's pretty massive. I'm not sure whether that's true because I mean, I've spoken with people inside, and probably very few individuals will know the true extent
mm,
of this. Mm.
yeah.
But you were involved in Lazada, right? Very early days.
Very early days. This is like ancient history where we were sharing warehouses and basically we're copying all of our operational processes for each other. But yeah, that was. I mean, I don't see how
Mm.
that's going to be relevant today. But yeah, I mean, long time ago, somewhat involved, very loosely.
Did you remember how the name came about? So this is
Oh
something
yeah, I was
I've
there for
always been.
that. I was completely there for all. I was there for the naming of Lazada and Zalora. So initially, when the
Mm.
Samware brothers had launched, Bigfoot was the project for the region, and then
Bigfoot.
yeah, that was like just like the project term, right? It's basically
Okay.
copying Zalando over to Southeast Asia because they already had the Iconic back then, and they had Russia La Moda, And so we were
Yep.
initially the plan was every country had a different name. So actually for
Mm.
Zalora, it was all these different Z's. And then I remember for Vietnam, we picked Zilindi or something like that, or something funny. And
Okay, fortunately, it's not Zilingo, but
yeah, yeah. No, there was something like that was probably in another country, right? But then eventually they decided that for branding, someone picked. I don't know that story, but it was consolidated to one name Zalora, and then Lazada also was
mm,
just picked randomly. Like they just kind of like how that name sounded, So then one day we all just got the names, and then we all were. I was the one actually typing in to buy all the domains with Henrik Zilmer for Zalora. I remember back then. So and then Lazada came after that, though, because Lazada was a few months behind us, right? And then, as we know, very
mm.
different diverging cultures and different base. But yeah,
that has that uh, that has been a problem actually. I wouldn't say plaguing, but that has a big problem for Lazada ever since, right? I mean, you have different cultures
oh yeah,
infused into, and not really fused, been sort of wrangled into this entity
yeah. Well, I mean,
from the very. Yeah, go ahead.
it helped define their success too, right? I mean, of course,
Mm,
on a category basis, there was a bigger pain point of needing general commerce online in Southeast Asia, especially from the
mm,
perspective, eventually, the thesis of Chinese import to a wider mass adoption. Whereas like fashion, like I only heard till this year, which finally Zalora is finally opening offline stores. I just don't know what took them so long to do that. It's like if you wanted growth, go to the place where people are going to buy, right? So it's
yeah,
just so fashion just wasn't a big pain point. So I mean, of course, comparing categories, one had better potential already, but also the culture to drive that success and at least perceive as a win where Alibaba bought in was very important, right?
mm,
If maybe we were
mm,
more aggressive and had that culture on Zalora, maybe things might have been different. Maybe it would have pushed offline with different leadership and vision. Maybe it would be in a better position with better branding and better sales outlets. We could be more of a traditional retailer in the
mm.
region, right? So I don't know. These are just all
Yeah, it's
hypotheticals. So
yeah, of course. I mean, history. Yeah, yeah. So, um, in 2016, when Alibaba bought Lazada, I think we discussed about this a while ago that there was actually a team of Taobao, right,
yeah,
operating in Southeast Asia. I mean, the team was exactly kicked out of Taiwan because of the election in
yeah,
Taiwan,
yeah,
which got someone like pro-independence, and of course that made it hard for Alibaba to operate. So the team came to Southeast Asia, and initially they were saying that okay, maybe we should build Taobao in Southeast Asia. I think the group's calculation was back then that I mean they want to go international,
yeah,
but they calculated that starting everything from scratch is probably too risky
yeah,
and takes lots of time. Buying a company which already has, I mean, established presence in all the 6 major countries, and at least at that time was market number one was I think it was rational, right? I mean, so you get access very quickly to operations in all the countries, and theoretically you can plug in some of your expertise of the supply chain of the e-commerce operations, combine that with understanding of the local leadership about each market, and theoretically that could work. But in reality is that we put different people together with different expectations, with different cultural contexts. It's very hard.
Well, that's like, I mean, this is what we've talked about historically on LLB, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, today we have a lot of global successes of China expansion. Back then, when we talked about it, maybe not so much, right? Now we have Shein, we have Temu, etc.
Mm.
How are you viewing this now, though? Like, based off what you said with Taobao, right, and what we're seeing with Lazada, do you think this is another failed experiment in Chinese expansion? Is this growing pains, or how would you say what's happening?
I, I think if I look at Shein, if I look at Temu, and I mean TikTok Shop is a different animal, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah,
But Shein and Temu are essentially cross-border, so
yeah,
they don't have the huge setup like in each country
yeah,
to
localized
to
and
to to onboard the sellers, serve the sellers.
yeah, correct.
I mean they don't have full like local to local setup. They only have the supply chain in China, which they have strong sort of I wouldn't say control, but that they have a very very strong understanding,
Yeah,
and as something which they know how to handle. But I think for Alibaba, when they got into Lazada, they got this huge complexity of a bit of cross-border, a bit of
Local.
but majority like local,
Yeah.
all these different countries.
Yeah.
And that was hugely challenging for anybody to do it, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
have to make lots of decisions. You have to allocate resources, and looking at the current retrenchment, it seems that they felt that that each country was too bulky, and they want to centralize some of the resource allocation.
Yeah.
I think all the CMOs or in all the countries were laid off, so which means that they want to centralize the marketing function to the regional. But of course, the same thing can be argued, right? I mean, if you centralize too much, you lose touch with the
Correct.
realities on the ground,
Correct.
and
Gets even spirals out of
um,
control, possibly further.
I don't know which one is more right, which one is more wrong, but I think depending on
Well,
the circumstances.
don't you think it's also a function of how the mothership's performing? Like in prosperous times, you can afford that kind of fat and maybe localization, which maybe has its own benefits. But is
Mm,
Alibaba doing very well in China now? And is this a reaction,
mm.
or is this more of a strategic, purposeful move, like you said, where it's efficiency streamlining with a very clear understanding of how to grow the ecosystem from here?
In terms of cash generation, I think Alibaba is still doing exceptionally well. I think last year they generated 27 billion of US dollars of free cash flow.
Wow. Yeah.
But in terms of market positioning, in terms of growth, this was where the challenge is, right? I mean,
Yeah.
a month ago, Pinduoduo's market cap, about a month ago, Pinduoduo's market cap overtook that of Alibaba. In terms of market share, Alibaba in core e-commerce in China,
Yeah.
it went down from 80% to 50% over
Yeah.
the last 5 years. So obviously they see a crisis, and but over the years they've been looking at how to deal with Lazada, because Lazada continues to lose money
Correct.
and market share at the same time.
Well,
So
that's the problem of every. I mean, this is the problem of trying to create a regional category. Everyone wants to
mm,
imagine Southeast Asia as one basket, when in reality it's not. Right? It's a collection of baskets that, I mean, I guess Grab is the best one where there is actual value had if I go from one country to another. But the question is, how much of
mm,
that value is it worth in terms of their valuation? And we see that in
mm.
the stock price now, right? So it's
I think
yeah, I don't know.
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just
Go ahead.
thinking
Go
it's
ahead.
just it's not such a straightforward thing, where you put a flag in every country, then you have like a nice, $100 billion company, right? So, and maybe that's what you realize over time. I don't know.
I think many investors, when they do the projections, that I mean, I don't know, they look at the World Bank, whatever report, and Google Temasek report, Southeast Asia, combined. I mean, so many people, like rising middle class, so much spending power.
Yeah,
But you and I mean, we have been on the ground leading teams. I mean, you know how complex that is. I
yeah,
mean, in a single country,
oh
let
yeah,
alone like doing it 6 countries.
yeah,
Um, I think till now, I think one thing Grab is probably grateful for is it has gone through this tough phase of building like the presence in each country, building like the market number one in each
yeah,
country, and unfortunately, they're in a category where everybody else thinks that okay requires too much local effort, so that's why it's tough.
yeah.
So that deters like potential new entrants, even though people are still skeptical about how much value that really is.
Well, a lot of their theses are evaporating, right? Like the big
Mm,
thesis was, do rideshare. That rideshare will keep growing, will be a cash cow. Then do food, that grows.
mm,
But then that's also we found out that's also not necessarily true. It's hyper
mm,
competitive. Food's very still remains fragmented to a large degree, except
mm,
for some of these,
mm,
you know, hyper localized stuff that people churn out. Then what? Finance is next, like Shopee banking. Like my understanding, I don't follow closely again, but from what I hear other people
mm,
is that a lot of
mm,
the like banking projects are stalled because it depends on country to country and how you acquire your license. And so from
mm,
what I hear from some markets that, Shopee paused their plans with the places that
mm,
they got their licensing from, and then, it's causing frictions in their partnership. I don't know for Grab, maybe they're more organized, they have better political pull, they have better, better ways to, accrue the value across countries. But it seems like the thesis of, the super app not really materializing as people thought, and therefore as again, it reflects in your valuations, which I don't know.
mm.
What do you think?
I start to think that Shopee is a stronger believer of super app compared to Grab, uh,
Oh yeah,
even though they
interesting.
don't talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So So obviously, I mean, Grab talked a lot about the super app vision, but they don't do that as much nowadays.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you see that Grab is a disciplined executioner, right? I'm not sure whether that's the right word, but okay, this year the target is just EBITDA positive. Next year the target is free cash flow, whatever. So it's
They're hitting
slow,
there.
slowly getting there, and which doesn't excite investors, but for the company, I think at least the company now is viable, right? So
Yeah.
compared to shooting everywhere like 2018, 2019,
Yeah,
okay, trying
correct.
to do insurance, trying to do that. I think now it's more disciplined. Shopee, I think Shopee has lots of assets, and at this stage, putting everything in a single Shopee app it's making Shopee app very heavy.
Oh,
But somehow they're not. I mean, aside from the bank, which regulation needs to be a different app, they're not launching any new apps.
yeah. Well, my biggest
Mm.
complaint is that for a company that has so much money, they don't have a global app. I still can't download the Shopee app in this day and age because I'm in the US store, which is just ridiculous, So I
That,
can't
that,
use
that,
their
that,
food
wait,
services. I can't use their app on the shopping, right? It's just so stupid.
you are like one of the minorities
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
strategically,
Yeah, exactly. I'm an
strategically,
outlier.
know.
I'm an outlier yeah, exactly. I don't matter, but
Mm,
I don't know.
mm,
I don't have that
mm,
problem. Lala Move had that problem, but they fixed it. It took them like a year or two to fix it. Grab never had
mm.
that problem, right? I don't know. This day and age when you build companies, don't you want to be more global? So I don't, yeah,
I think it depends on how they started the setup, right?
that's true. Yeah.
Back in Rocket days, I mean, we try to revamp a different version based on different structure.
Yeah,
You almost feel that you need to have a separate, completely redundant team to do that.
correct.
Doing that on production is just super difficult.
Yeah. What
Mm,
what are
mm,
your thoughts on Temu these days? Because when I went to US, I have a very specific impression talking to people. But
Okay.
like
Mm,
I think the view in Southeast Asia is very different. It almost seems very starry, dreamy eyed.
mm.
What is the current reputation of Temu in the region now?
What was the what was the thing you heard from the US from consumers?
It might be that I'm talking to the wrong target customers, but the
Mm,
common thing was that a lot of old people that I met were targeted, so they actually heard of Temu.
mm,
But
mm,
then like when they had
mm,
bought stuff, they're like scam.
mm,
Almost everyone I talk to is
mm,
like, yeah, this is a scam. Like this is another
mm,
wish.com. I don't want to use this. Right. Because maybe I'm talking to more
mm,
affluent people. Right. Granted, I
mm,
bet you there's a big market of people who want to buy the cheapest stuff like wish.com. But ultimately, that doesn't
mm,
lead you to an Amazon type position of dominance of recurring customers, strong lifetime value, where then you could accrue the value over time into making better product and better offerings. So to me, it
mm.
felt like Temu is not very substantial to me when I talk to the customers or people who tried them out or used them. But even I talk to younger people, they're like, yeah, I heard about it, but I never bothered using it. Right. So
Yeah.
again, it could be I'm talking to the wrong people, but to me, it just felt like this is not going to be it's more like a fad. And then can you take that, beachhead and transfer it into something more meaningful? Or is it just one of those things where, it was just like a punt and then see how it goes and we're not sure where the value is going to really accrue at the end of the day again. Right. And you spin in circles.
Mm. I've I, I've been observing Temu actually quite a bit. I actually
Yeah.
visited them in November as well. I mean, formidable organization. I mean, very very driven, very very focused,
Yeah.
very very lean. If you trust the public sources about Lazada's headcount, the whole Pinduoduo, including Temu, is only 30% larger than Lazada. So that says a lot about their efficiency.
Wow. Yeah.
It's uh, how would I say? I look at the numbers being tracked by different scraping services, and the latest I have is they're doing about $2 billion of GMV.
Yeah.
Is that per week or per month? I think per week.
Yeah.
So the growth is still there, and but when you look at the users, it's very very interesting dynamics, right? Very
Yeah.
very little overlap with
Correct.
Shein users, because initially people thought, okay, Temu was competing against Shein, and also most of the users are about 35.
Mm.
Most of the users are about 35. So that's the exact people, I mean, middle class who have been impacted by inflation.
Yeah.
Um, according to people there, they said the customer retention is is as good as they had targeted. So it seems that they're okay with that. And they're making lots of adjustments along the way as well. So I don't know. From the number point of view, it's not it's I don't know. I think it's still impressive growth, and some investors had higher expectations, but they do have some bottlenecks, like logistics, for example.
Yeah.
Like bunch of Chinese investors have actually invested in this in the Canadian last mile company, because only that company had the willingness to work with Temu at their sort of growth trajectory. Southeast Asia, largely absent, right? I mean, it's available in Malaysia and the Philippines, but they have not been pushing.
Yeah.
I mean, the prices there are not competitive.
Well, I think what's very interesting is because, especially, I think, I don't know if this, you maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe it's from the perspective of people in this region. A lot of us are not in a country like US, China, or even say Indonesia, right? But like, it's the mindset that like when you do something big in a big country, you get big results. But to me, ultimately, it's a question of sustainability, right? So it's coming from Singapore, that's going to look fantastic. It's like, wow, 2 billion GMV and that kind of revenue. But like, if you were to invest the same amount of money and you did the same effort, it probably would be similar, right? So like, it's just that when you do something on that large scale in the big market, you're going to see big results. But to me, it's always a question of sustainability at the end of the day. And what's interesting, what you said, they don't compete with Shane. So they might be winning in certain categories, but the question is, can they expand beyond those categories? Because maybe certain categories lend unto themselves a repurchase of something very cheap that people would buy over and over again. But does it, lead to, higher basket, higher quality value things across more categories, right? Ultimately, it comes down to, product assortment, like we said, operations, and then the price. And it seems that they're doing price and I guess to some degree assortment because they're based in China, right? So I don't know if that, it could be a nice niche that they can keep milking over time if no one else wants to compete in that space. And if they can keep building out a moat in that space, right? So, but other than that though, I questions like, is it very sustainable and will it keep growing? I don't know.
I think for that, so we will have our sort of assessment based on, how they are doing currently, right?
Yeah, sure. Attraction.
But there are two things. I mean, first is the organization. How fast can they learn from the mistakes? If they decide, okay, certain things are not going well, how fast can they sort of even do a U-turn, right? How fast can they do that? And this is a super lean organization, so I trust that they can do that much better compared to many of the marketplaces that we see.
Yeah.
And second is that what kind of competitive pressure they would trigger, right? So we knew that, okay, so for TikTok Shop was internally debating whether they should do US or whatever. But Temu being there, and TikTok said, okay, all the top executives stop wasting time in Southeast Asia, go to the US. And if you read the Bloomberg article this week, they said that TikTok Shop wants to increase the US GMV by 10-fold next year.
Wow, good goal. Good goal. I like it. You should do big.
Very aggressive goal. Yeah, exactly. So how that is going to impact the calculations of the Temu leadership, right?
Yeah.
And how that would trigger sort of Amazon from initially not wanting to respond to actually having to mount some response. Yeah. So all these uncertainties would probably decide, how things will evolve.
Yeah, I like, the one thing I like what you said is I like the Chinese boldness. It's kind of different to how we contrast it, where expansion is not very good out of China. But this kind of boldness, I think, is kind of, I don't know, do we see that in American companies who have global dominance in like social media spaces? Like, why didn't they build shops that big? They have the same exact, they have huge cash generating things. Maybe it's focus. Maybe they're going different directions. I don't know. But like, it seems to be something that we don't see from the West globally outwards, right? So what do you think between, why is China so bold in this? Why is the West not so bold?
I think this generation of companies, Temu and TikTok, they're different from Alibaba and Tencent. So they are still relatively young, and they have one strong lever that they can leverage. In TikTok's case, is the supply chain in China. In Temu's case, is the supply chain in China.
Yeah.
In TikTok Shop's case, is like hundreds of millions of active. I think now more than 1 billion of active users, which are not going to go away.
Yeah. And that's a huge moat.
yes, they are able to mobilize their team. I mean, if you speak with many people within TikTok team, they'll tell you that okay, team is extremely chaotic. But there's still, I mean, they managed to get the team to move towards a certain direction.
Yeah.
And choose to strategically ignore all this chaos and stuff. I mean, this is what happened at Shopee a few years ago, but at a different scale. I mean, whether this will sustain, I don't know. It depends on how this organization can transform themselves and become more mature organizations, but not become, big bureaucratic organizations before they become immature.
Yeah, correct. Well, the two big things that affect this, I think, are going to be number one, competition, like you said, and then also the political aspect, right? Like how these companies get
Trump.
structured. Yeah, Trump might come back, it might ban some things again, right? Then you have more reactions on reactions, like you said. So, like, I think the geopolitical risk is very high still. Competition, like you said, we don't know how each competitor reacts, and and it's very easy to get lost into that kind of thing we saw the past decades in Southeast Asia, where we fight on price only, right? Ultimately, customers will benefit, I guess, to some degree, especially if the economy returns, the people are willing to spend, consumers confident, right? That will be fantastic. That will boast maybe general e-commerce. But, who knows? Maybe economy tanks too and customers tank, and then they have no economics or legs to stand on, and that everyone's thesis collapses and everyone goes back to their own country. It's very, very
and
hard to say.
is
Yeah, exactly. Then, then we go back to okay, we just go back to our old patterns. Everyone just become smaller valuations, smaller companies, smaller world again. So I'm not too sure where this lands us in the state of e-commerce. I think we've talked very much on the global macro scale. But is there anything else you think at the state of e-commerce that matters in terms of maybe innovation? How for example, like live streaming is the big thing everyone's talking about. Like TikTok is just huge numbers on certain categories, right? Especially you see on a localized, hyper localized scale. We're talking large numbers. I see that these local live streamers are doing. That's layering technology. That's layering other medium into their platform. Is there anything else you think that matters for the state of e-commerce aside from the global macro?
I think live is something which I think is still poorly understood by many even practitioners outside China. So this year we are actually organizing a few expeditions to China for people to probably get a sense of the whole live ecosystem and the whole logic. You should join one of these. We have time.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think a dark horse is probably AI, right? I mean, if you follow the Q3 earnings call for Alibaba, the three top executives mentioned about AI 53 times. They mentioned about GMV only 8 times. So not because they already figured out a magic formula that they know how to do AI.
No one has.
Yeah. But they have seen, right? I mean, e-commerce, this is something that people don't realize. E-commerce is still hugely labor intensive.
Oh, yeah.
If you look at the layoffs from Lazada, if you look at all these enablers, people design banners, uploading campaigns, picking the goods, doing customer service. And the whole ecosystem, I mean, in Southeast Asia, it's easily 10 times or 15 times, 20 times the total number of employees by the platforms. So that lots of people doing the manual work there.
Oh, yeah.
So people start imagining, right? If parts of this or all of this get replaced by AI, that's huge productivity gain. And from platform point of view, I mean, if you are falling behind against the competitors in this transition, then you are going to be much less efficient.
Yeah.
That translates into prices. That translates into fulfillment levels. That translates into how fast you can iterate.
Yeah.
So I do think that that's an area where all the platforms will invest lots of resources, and that they can't afford to be left behind.
Well, I think
at least they think so.
I think by right, listening to what you say, I feel some of the more mature companies will have a competitive advantage there. When you have a base of long-term vision and ability to execute against that long-term vision and adjust against it along the way, for example, like Amazon, I think they already were investing in big technological innovations from drones to acquiring offline assets, right? To integrating those offline assets. Like they had the vision where they were building towards, at least when Jeff was around. I don't know where that means if he's not there, if they lose that focus. I would imagine Alibaba, if they have their stuff together, shouldn't be far off. The thing is, these new guys like Temu and all these guys, they've only been operating a few years, right? So they have that risk of existential risk where they need to build a big machine while contending with everything you said of all those big changes. And can they stay nimble enough to clear that hurdle and plant a flag that's sustainable and meaningful towards the long term, where it's defensible, where someone doesn't chip away, across a decade and then they become irrelevant again. So I don't know. It's
I think
yeah.
I think for these players, what I'm afraid of. I mean, I don't really care, but if I were there, what I would be afraid of is something that you and I have seen so many times back in our Rocket days, right?
Yeah.
You do something, you plan for something, in 3 months you don't see results, you pivot.
Yeah, correct.
Without understanding exactly why it's not
correct.
showing the results.
Correct. Yeah.
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 They are just shooting the dots randomly, and you do a lot of 0 to 1 innovation. They're rarely like let one go to 100.
Yeah. It's just going in circles. I mean, that's the very classic Peter Thiel like 0 to 1 thesis, where he says a lot of people fail to actually have real long-term visions. Like when they started PayPal, they really had the vision of just transporting money across the world from Palm Pilot to Palm Pilot. Did it happen? It never really happened. Of course, it became, it got acquired and did a lot of big things, but at least they were anchored towards something meaningful and not just guessing. And so he always had the criticism of a lot of, like, when startups became cool and a lot of people want to become founders, they just don't have that depth or clarity. I talked to a lot of founders today still, same problem. It's just they have a very loose idea about it, but they never spent a lot of time thinking about it or even, I mean, if not, it's just luck. You might get to a product market fit of something and then you're just guessing and then you keep iterating on that. That's one way to do it. But the other way to do it is to try to, do something long, meaningful that accrues value and compounds over time, and you're like shortened. And when you're wrong, at least you have something to measure against. That's something
I think
profound,
completely agree. I think I don't know. I mean, over this year, so if you had the time, I mean, get some friends and we can talk about that on LLB to talk about a few case studies. I mean, historically, I mean, how people, because I do think that that deep strategic thinking is kind of lacking in the tech ecosystem. People people are forced to be opportunistic, and I think having a bit of anchor.
That's why I've been very quiet the past few years.
You've been thinking.
I've been. I mean, like, because I don't do as much. I do spend a lot of time thinking, but also it's fighting personal demons and bad habits relative to the thinking. And the clarity does come, and I am, finally working towards stuff that's more meaningful to me, at least, where at least I know whatever I'm doing will be for the next few decades, right? Where it's just,
that's good.
Instead of just finding an idea and guessing, a lot of my friends I still talk to, they're still in that mode, even though they've been working for decades in the same ecosystem as us.
Sorry, I get excited when I talk about things, which
it's fine. It's fine.
I do find that. So I do find a few friends of mine running circles, right? I mean, very hard on execution, and
Correct.
okay, fails, and very hard on execution on the next thing, fails again, and you're basically trying your luck.
You burn out, though. It affects your psyche. It affects how you view yourself. Then you see other people doing; they're more successful, right? It's not. And then, like, you stop doing. But the most important thing in this game is that we follow the power laws, right? Like, even the players we talk about in e-commerce, like, whoever's going to win, it's just going to be the power laws. But the thing is, like, anyone who has early success is just an outlier. They're lucky. But the thing is, you got to keep doing and being consistent and improving over time, so it does eventually compound towards something, right? So, yeah.
We should talk more of this.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
All right. So, any final comments going into 2024? Anything else you're excited about or look forward to doing?
I'm going back to China for Chinese New Year or Tet.
Nice. See the family. That's good.
Yeah, first time in 4 years. I don't know how drunk I'll get.
Very drunk. All my friends who've been going to China in the countryside, they've been getting drunk a lot. So good luck with that.
Yeah, let's see. But hopefully that this year would be I don't know, regardless of the external environments, that we can navigate, because we're more mature. We think a lot about what I've been through, learn from the past mistakes and the past successes, and hopefully that is a meaningful year for us, for people around us, for our teams, etc.
I agree. All right, thank you for your time, Jianggan.
Cool. Yeah.